What's going on, guys? This is Miasin. So about 2 weeks ago, I've made a video on a bunch of cards that are banned that may or may not ruin the game if they were to get unbanned. And you guys seem to enjoy it, so I figured why not make a sequel to it. So in this video, I will be going into in-depth analysis on each card in order to figure out whether or not it will ruin the game if it were to get unbanned. And if this video hits 1,000 likes, I will go for part 3, so you already know what to do. But before going any further, I just wanted to give a quick little shout out to my sponsors, Inspire TCG as well as Dueling. They are fantastic guys, so make sure you check them out. Links will be in the description box below, and now let's jump right into it. Alright, so first things first, we've got Arch Nemesis Protoss. The game has evolved to a point where even his shadows can easily be searched out thanks to Flag, which is searchable by Infernal Flame Banshee, which is a joke to make. As hilarious as this may sound, I believe that even if Protoss were to get unbanned, it wouldn't really change too much to the game because the only deck that can really abuse it is Sword Soul. But outside of Protoss, the Sword Soul deck is very fair and reasonable, and arguably already power crept in today's absurdly fast metagame. But cards like Protoss shouldn't really exist because they're lingering floodgates and they shut down a mechanic completely, and you can't really do anything about it once it resolves. But to be fair, the exact same thing can be said about his shadows. My personal opinion is that both Protoss and his shadows should get banned, but if one of them is banned and the other one isn't, it kinda makes no sense. Same argument for Artifact Scythe. At this point, the card should stay banned because there is nothing really positive that can come out of a card that really just shuts down a full mechanic, which is the extra deck. Alright, next up is a bunch of almost identical looking cards that pretty much do the exact same thing and are all banned for pretty much the same reason. So every insane token generating card like Blackwing Gofu, the Vague Shadow, or Grinder Golem, or Dandelion, or Galaxy Tomahawk are all banned for a very good reason, and that's the fact that they summon a lot of tokens for link summoning material. Obviously, these tokens can also be used for other purposes like synchro summoning, but that's way less degenerate, I want to say, because you also have to rely on tuners and some other things, and it's a little complicated. But still, I believe that if we simply errata these cards to make it so that you cannot use the tokens as link materials, they would kind of somewhat be a little more fine. But like, let's take a look at Gofu, for example. It's one card that summons you like a Link 3 without any effort whatsoever. And you could also make like a 4 material Saryuja to like replenish your hand with this card, which is very correct as well. But Dandelion is by far the most ridiculous one because of its effect, its typing, and also the fact that it's not once per turn whatsoever. Grinder Golem is probably one of the more fair cards because you can't really normal summon if you use it, and the other weird thing about Grinder Golem is that without Firewall, it's less abusable than it was before. Alright, now it's time to put some respect on the nastiest fusion monsters in the ban list. Elder Entity Norden, how fair is that one? Not fair at all, and I can't believe that we've had to deal with that card in tandem with Instant Fusion and Fusion Substitute back in the days. Sitting there and watching your opponent draw 7 cards off of the Fusion Substitute combo with Daigusto Emerald drawing like 20 billion cards was not really fun. The worst feeling was when you didn't open Max C, and then your opponent would eventually draw Max C after a while, and then you would have wasted all that time for nothing because there is no way you win now. Norden was also generically abusable. Every deck could pretty much play it because Instant Fusion was a 3, but now it's at 1, and Broad Bull is banned, so things are a little different. Norden can still be abused as a super poly target because it's a joke to make. I mean, you just need like any combination of Synchro and or Xyz monsters and you're good to go. But funny enough, I actually really don't see that as a degenerate or unhealthy thing. As a matter of fact, I actually think it's okay if Norden comes back simply as a super poly target. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is we have to ban Instant Fusion if we want Norden to come back. And we have to make sure that Broad Bull never ever gets unbanned. But honestly, even without Norden, I still believe that Instant Fusion is a ban-worthy card. Remember when people were summoning Kid Kalos off of Instant Fusion? Yeah, you're searching a Tearlament's card and then you're mailing 5 cards. I don't see how that's any worse than summoning Norden. Oh, and by the way, banning Instant Fusion could also be a great way of unbanning Supreme King Dragon Starving Venom. And by the way, Tyrant Neptune is in the same boat, so we might as well unban that one while we're at it. Without Instant Fusion to go into Nightingale and then copy its effect twice to burn for 8k, there is nothing really unfair that you can do with these cards. So yeah, Instant Fusion was the problem all along, what do you know? Anyways, the Thunder Dragon Colossus is the kind of card that always seems to divide people, and I think I have a good idea of why. The card is rather fair and reasonable in the pure Thunder Dragon deck, but the issue is that the pure Thunder Dragon deck is not the only deck that can abuse Colossus. First of all, with Master Rule 5 being a thing, you can actually summon Colossus and a bunch of other annoying extra deck monsters without having to waste your time with Link arrows. And worse than all of that, everyone gets to summon Colossus now thanks to Nemesis Corridor. Jesus, how many annoying Nemesis monsters can ruin the game at this point? Like 4? But yeah, that one's annoying because it is searchable off of Cupid Pitch and it single-handedly gets you to summon Colossus. And Colossus is the kind of card that is either extremely easy to out because you physically hard drew the card that outs it, or literally impossible because your hand is filled with consistency and search cards. And it's really not like you can say that it's the player's fault to incorporate search cards in their deck, because otherwise you're just gonna start breaking, and that's not really how you're supposed to approach the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You need search cards to play, so being punished just for playing the game correctly as it should be makes absolutely no sense. I have no problem with Colossus being unbanned and just going to 1 if Nemesis Corridor gets banned instead. I just don't really want to see Colossus being played in decks other than Thunder Dragon. Because trust me, without Maxi running around, everybody will be abusing Thunder Dragon Colossus if they can. Alright, now time for some super easy yes and no's. Royal Oppression. Hell nah. I'd rather die than see a floodgate that is like very similar to Imperial Order ever again. Shockmaster. Definitely not, it's really unfair and lingers until the end of the next turn, which is not really fun. It's the kind of card that eventually will be abused even if it doesn't necessarily get abused right off the bat. Outer Entity Azathoth is kind of like the same, but without the rank up magic, you can't really use it on the opponent's turn. Either way, these combos involve bricks anyways. My real problem with Azathoth is that you can actually summon it with Nyarla and do some really nasty things going first and second. Going second, your opponent can have like 10 monster negates, and if he doesn't have any spot removal that are proactive, you can actually break the full board just with 2 level 4 monsters. And if you're going first and you can summon Azathoth, your opponent could have all the Veilers, all the Ash, all the Drolls, and all the Nibiru, and you might just play through all of them just because you can prevent your opponent from using monster effects. Even Imperm cannot negate Azathoth, that is crazy. Anyways, Phoenician Cluster Amaryllis has a very fair effect. I'm just kidding. Its effect is not once per turn, so it actually leads to infinite loops with Topologic Bomber Dragon that creates FTKs. It just needs an errata to make it once per turn and then we're good, but in the current state, there is no way we can unban the card. Now, Eclipse Wyvern is terrifying and all, but without LP, it might be a little less good than it was before. It's still very good with Bestials, obviously, and it could still be very insane in the Dragon Link deck. And maybe, just maybe, we might have to ban Pisty if we really want Eclipse Wyvern to come back into the game. But I don't know, I don't think it would be as good as when it was insane in the Danger Thunder Crusadia deck back in 2019. Now this next one is dedicated to all my 0 IQ haters out there. Ultimate Offering is one of the worst, if not the worst card in the ban list right now. The card is so incredibly horrendous, not a single deck would want to play it. The Flunderies deck already has a bunch of ways of normal summoning on the opponent's turn, so it's not like an extra way of doing that would change anything. And any other deck doesn't really give a shit about normal summoning monsters on the opponent's turn anyways. To think that people are still afraid of Ultimate Offering in 2023 because they think that yellow, green, and red gadget might be tier 0 is just mind-blowing. We really do be living in a clown world, I swear to God. But hey, apparently I'm the stupid one, my bad. Now, but seriously, if you still think that Ultimate Offering would break the game in 2023, you need a doctor. I'm sorry. Alright, next up is Mass Driver, and honestly, I don't really understand why that card is on the ban list, but not Cannon Soldier. I mean, if anything, Cannon Soldier is easier to search, so that card should be on the ban list, unlike Toon Cannon Soldier and all the other variations anyways. It doesn't matter if Mass Driver was abusable in Frog FTK like over 10 years ago, none of that really changes anything in today's metagame. The only good FTK that is like in an infinite loop that burns your opponent with like Cannon Soldier S cards would be Morphotronic. That doesn't involve Firewall, obviously, because that card got a huge errata. Like, Mass Driver wouldn't really be played in that deck in the first place. And that deck sucks, so who cares? Alright, now Kaiser Coliseum is a 3 in the OCG and 0 in the TCG, and I also don't really understand that. So, low-key, it's actually not that difficult to break through Kaiser Coliseum now, at least much easier than back in the days, but that doesn't necessarily make it a fair card. I mean, that card is like the prime example of the kind of card that shouldn't exist in Yu-Gi-Oh! In the first place. So yeah, there is no reason for me to vouch for a one-sided floodgate whatsoever. Now, Nightmare Goblin is actually low-key not that bad since Firewall Dragon is now completely less good than it was before. I think if the card gets unbanned now, it would be a great card, but wouldn't really be out of control. And to be fair, Goblin also coexisted with Summon Sorceress, so maybe that was the reason why the card had a really bad rep. I could be wrong though, maybe Goblin would still be broken even without Summon Sorceress and Firewall, but I don't know. You do have to commit a lot before getting the benefit off of Goblin because you have to summon it in the main monster zone, so summon a Link monster first and then get like something, and that's a lot of effort just for like one extra normal summon that also makes you discard a card. Again, the card would be really cool, and getting one extra normal summon is nice in a bunch of decks, but wouldn't really be like super degenerate. Metamorphosis is a super fun card that I think should come back to 1 because of Triple Tactic Thrust and just to see where it would go. The only issue would be summoning Natura Exterio and Last Word from another planet because these cards are super unhealthy. I mean, they're irrelevant on their own, but they're unhealthy if you get to summon them super easily with cards like Metamorphosis. If Metamorphosis was errata to return back the fusion monster on the end phase, that would be kind of fine, but it's not the case. So yeah, the issue isn't really the card itself, but rather the targets that you can actually summon with the card. But yeah, my Cyber Dragon deck would love it because you could turn Cyber Dragon into Rampage and then get your stuff going. Now, how about Mirage of Nightmare? Fair or unfair? It's kind of like a card of Demise, but you're drawing later and you're also discarding later. As a matter of fact, try to see it as a combination of Future Fusion and Card of Demise. In both the anime and retro formats, people were pretty much combining Mirage of Nightmare with cards like MST so that they were drawing 4 cards on the opponent's turn, and then on turn 3, they were destroying their own Mirage of Nightmare to avoid the drawback. So that way they were using 2 cards to draw 4 cards, and that would end up being a very slow +2. Realistically, that would only work in trap decks like Labyrinth or maybe stun decks like Runic. Again, I do believe that Card of Demise is probably the best analogy for Mirage of Nightmare, but the only difference is that Card of Demise is searchable with Rust. Mirage of Nightmare would be like an unsearchable weird one-of, but I guess you could recur it back with Barricade Board Blocker. It would be nice to test it as a one-of in the metagame just to see where it goes, but I wouldn't really want to believe that it would change that much to the game. I mean, at the end of the day, draw 4 is draw 4, but it's more complicated than that. Alrighty, so now we're getting near the end, so let's dive into the 2 final cards. So both Dimension Fusion and Return from the Different Dimension almost do the exact same thing. The only difference, almost, is that one is a spell and one is a trap. Wow, no way, I had no idea! Alright, seriously though, Dimension Fusion is just another soul charge, but lets you keep your battle phase. Thinking. Like, imagine that with Shifter, like, bro, what the hell? And like, it doesn't matter if you're also helping your opponent and letting him, like, summon a bunch of monsters from the Banished, because, like, you have all the momentum, you're just gonna kill anyways. Nothing about this card is fair, especially when you're considering the existence of Shifter and Thrust. Now, on the other hand, Return from the Different Dimension is a slower version of Dimension Fusion, but this time it doesn't really help your opponent. But you're probably using this on turn 3, so after setting up for a 1 full turn, or on your opponent's turn, which is a little stupid because all of your monsters get banished on the end phase. I'll be honest with you, any card that has to wait until turn 3 to be used is usually very fair. Like, again, that reminds me a lot of the errata version of Future Fusion because it does nothing right away, but then if your opponent does nothing on his own turn, then you're exploding. But realistically, your opponent will never do nothing. So yeah, Return from the Different Dimension is probably not going to be doing anything even if it comes back to 3. It actually completely sucks in contrast with Dimension Fusion. When the card did get banned, the context was different, so that's the reason why the card is still banned, but now it's completely fine if it comes back. Anyways, that's all I had for this video, so guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts about all these cards in the comment section below. And I will see you guys very soon. Peace.